welcome back to Turdtowns, the channel which visits the lesser known places in the UK. London, Shundon. Cambridge, Shamebridge. Bath, you're having a laugh. We're not interested in any of that rubbish. To see the real UK, you've got to get off the tourist map. And we've certainly done that today, with the 6 biggest turd towns in this part of Wales. Historically, this would be the West Glamorgan area, but nowadays it's made up of several council areas for Swansea and Neath. The map's on the screen now for anyone who's confused what we're discussing today. We've done this thing historically so far, and we've got to keep doing it that way, because most of the counties are too small nowadays. Usually, when I only include 6 places, it means that the county is really nice, but this time it's more of a case of the area being pretty small. I visited every single town, and here are my findings for the 6 biggest turd towns in West Glamorgan. And today's number 1 spot is truly horrific. It's hard to believe that places like this exist in modern Britain. It's up there with the worst of Wales. Make sure you like, comment, share and subscribe to help turd towns thrive. Number 6. Neath. Okay, the first entry on today's list is the medium-sized town of Neath with a population of 40,000. Neath can trace its lineage back to the medieval times and it's starting to get old really fast. It was also an important town for trade with all the surrounding mines in the valleys. Nowadays it doesn't seem so important here and the town is failing. Much of the town centre is closed down and this place needs some serious investment. But I do have to point out that they have already invested in Neath in the past. This area here is pretty new. Soon to be empty now Wilko's are shut down though. But at least the cafe is still open, full of dealers, adult entertainment actresses and lazy layabouts. Yeah, it's starting to feel like the money spent on this was a waste. But the state of the town centre isn't the only reason for Neath to make the list. The crime rate is real bad for the county. This is a county with a pretty low overall crime rate, so a crime rate of 98 in 1,000 compares poorly for Neath, but at least the house price is below average at 172,000. The town itself is devoid of any character, notable architecture, anything memorable, and it's boring. When I was sorting out my footage at the end, it took me ages to remember that this was even Neath that I was looking at. Even the castle has to be one of the most forgettable excuses for a castle in Wales. Most places when you see them they have some sort of distinguishing features. You know you've failed when the top Google image searches of Neath aren't even in the correct town. Number 5. Swansea. The most famous place on today's list is the city of Swansea with a population of 238,000. Somehow, I'd never been here before, so I was proper up for this visit. Okay, scratch that. I was up for visiting the city centre, because all I'd heard recently on the news from the housing estates was gang violence, riots and murders. Swansea does have a lot of crime, but as the place is so large, the data has been divided up, so it's hard to give a clear picture. The only thing that is clear is that it has around the 2nd worst crime rate in Wales after Newport. Swansea is so large, it's the type of place that needs its own video. I'll say this much for it, the centre area was similar to Cardiff, slightly worse. Not bad at all, but there were large amounts of aggressive homeless people. The central area looks like they're trying to be a mini Barcelona. It looks pretty nice when you look at it like this, but then they spoil it with this. Swansea used to be home to lots of industry as it's a seaside city, but not anymore. The main jobs here now are working in one of many Swansea's call centres or in a tanning studio. The average house price here will cost you around 198,000, mostly of the old terrace variety, so you can pretend that you're heading off down the mines in the morning. The roads here are a complete nightmare. It all seemed to be at a standstill around a confusing one-way system, not even at rush hour. Not sure if this is a norm for Swansea. On the positive front, the council here seem to get the job done when they commit to building something, and the place is kept to a better standard than a lot of cities I've visited. I think it really helped the city when Swansea City Football Club got a new ground and spent some time in the Premier League. That kind of stuff puts the city on the map. If it wasn't for the terrible crime rate here, I probably wouldn't have even included the city. It wasn't bad at all. Number 4. Seven Sisters. Seven Sisters is a former mining village at the top of the Welsh Valleys containing 1,300 of the most desperate souls in the country. Now the scenery up this mountain is top notch, but that is literally the only thing it has going for it. The name's weird enough here, and whilst I'm sure you could easily make an inbred joke, instead I'm going to tell you the truth where the name came from. The owner of the local mine was superstitious and named the mine Seven Sisters because his family, consisting of 7 sisters, were all obsessed with mining and they all attended the original mine opening. I guess you could say mining runs in the family, or at least something does. Anyway, it feels extremely lonely and desolate up here. It's very hilly too, but most notably it's one of those long streak of piss type places. It just goes on forever. The houses here represent nothing more than terraced shepherd huts. I could literally touch the roof. This leads me to the conclusion that the people in Seven Sisters are either hobbits, or they all have extremely sore heads. Quite a lot of the buildings here are run down in this village, but others are being fixed up, and I always go out of my way to make a point when an effort is being made. I did not hear English being spoken a single time here. Yeah, to any viewers outside of the UK, Wales does have its own language, which is preferred over English in the rural areas. Apparently it's one of the more difficult languages to learn too. So if you're not Welsh, it can be hard to settle in here, although the cheap average house price of $131,000 may tempt some. But you've got to bear in mind it's around 10 miles to the next big place, Neath, and as established, it's not great there either. The centre of the village features a huge wasteland where a nursing home once stood. They couldn't be bothered to do anything with this land, and now it's just a perfect place for the local junkies to hang out. The only major feature of Seven Sisters is the railway, which runs through the place. It doesn't stop here though, because it's been closed to passengers since the 60s. Instead, it contributes to the wasteland feel that's everywhere around here. The only other thing to mention is that they've clearly spent a lot of money on this park here, but they're letting the whole place fall into ruin. I have to question why they built it in the first place so far away from the village. It seems like a waste of money to build it and then let it fall into disrepair. I don't think many people visit Seven Sisters, but why would they? There's nothing to do here. There is nothing to do. Well, I'm not surprised there were Seven Sisters. Number 3, Pontardawe. Sitting ugly at number 3, we've got the small former industrial town of 5,533. I have to shout out another creator. I'm sure you all know him already, but it's GeoWizard, and he was the one who told me to come here. He's probably the only YouTuber who knows Wales better than I do at this point. But this isn't a video about him. It's about Pontardawe, a place that really isn't much good. I have been to worse towns in the Welsh Valleys, but this one is up there, and it's definitely the worst in any area of the valleys around the Swansea area. This video really made me notice something too. Why does Wales have so many derelict churches? Historically, Wales is a strictly religious country, and they were more loyal to the religion than the English as a whole. Is there some sort of major shift happening, or is it something else? Let me know in the comments, because I'm not exaggerating. Every town had at least 2 derelict religious spots. Anyway, it just has a rough feel here. The kind of place you wouldn't feel safe walking on your own late at night. I bet there used to be a lot more drunks here too. But not anymore, because all the pubs seem to be derelict. My main thought coming away from here was the pollution of this extremely busy crossroads. Trying to get across this crossroads was a chore in its own right. You really do have to rely on the button, because you have no chance running across. There was never a break in the traffic. I'm not sure why it's so busy here. It isn't a big place. It already has a bypass too. Maybe everyone else was like me and they were trying to look to depress themselves by looking for the worst place in Wales. I've started a trend. Another thing I can't explain is the shockingly high average house price of $217,000. Maybe these people were blind. For the fact that there's nothing else as run down and grim on this side of the valleys, Pontardawe takes the 3rd spot on this list. Number 2, Port Talbot. The most surprising thing about Port Talbot is that it does not take the top spot. Even more so when you learn that its nickname is Port Toilet. Port Toilet is a town with a population of 31,500. Most people will have never visited the town, but at the same time, most people have seen the town when they've driven over the town on the M4. The view of the town from the M4 is pretty dire, as grimy terraced houses line the streets, sitting in clouds of pollution being billowed out by one of the hundreds of nearby factories. So I was not looking forward to my visit, but to be honest, it wasn't as bad as I'd expected. For one thing, most of the place is flat, so most of the time you have no idea that you're right next to factories which are burning a hole in your lung. In case you're wondering, the factories are steelworks and it's one of the largest setups in the world. Whilst that does mean that there's plenty of jobs in the area, it also has the unfortunate knock-on effect of making Port Talbot one of the ugliest places in the UK. If you want to live in one of the ugliest places in the UK, it will cost you an average of $171,000, which for Wales is quite a lot. You have to imagine it's due to high-paying local jobs. But how much is your health worth? Because the area has the 3rd lowest life expectancy in Wales for men, with an average of 76.9. I wonder what the link is. Much of the town itself feels like wastelands and roundabouts. It really won't win any beauty awards. The town centre is nothing. Whilst it isn't in the worst state I've ever seen, there certainly isn't anything here anybody would ever want, and the people hanging around here make it an unpleasant place to spend time. So Port Talbot is pretty much the ball on the backside of Britain. But it may have one saving grace, and some of you may not have been aware of this. Port Talbot actually has a beach, and it's pretty nice surprisingly. Well, as long as you only look one way. Anyway, it's 3 miles long and it's one of the longest beaches in Wales. Definitely the finest part of Port Talbot. I just wouldn't recommend swimming here. Who knows what's in the water? Number 1, Britain Ferry. Wow, the top choice for West Glamorgan is as bad as anywhere I've been during my time on the channel. I'm going to do something incredibly rare here and give it a 0 out of 10. Just hang around and watch this. First of all, Britain Ferry is a town with a population of 5,800, sandwiched between Swansea and Port Talbot. Just like Port Talbot, it's another place being crushed by the M4, and there is industry here, or at least there used to be. It got its name from the ferry which used to carry people across the River Neath. Nowadays there's 2 busy bridges here, so you don't have to come into the town, and most people never will. I wish I never had. Grim is an understatement. There used to be steelworks, chemical works, and they also used to build parts of the Concord all around the waterside areas here, but nowadays there's just nothing at all. Just trash, and well, I just wouldn't recommend coming down here if I was you. It's probably not safe, and if you choose to visit, don't blame me. Some of the former industry buildings remain as rotting shells. One of them apparently covers 6 acres. What a waste. Surely something could be done with that. Let me know in the comments what you would do with it if you owned it. Anyway, the industry area is appalling, gloomy, intimidating and abandoned. But it's not the only part of Britain Ferry. Almost all the houses here are of the terrace variety. This feels like a very intimate, close-knit community. It's like stepping back in time. It certainly feels like the Welsh government are truly trying to take this place somewhere, as it's starting to resemble a town in a third world country. They need to hang their heads in shame. Levelling up money? From what I've seen, they need lots of that in Britain Ferry. Almost every building on the main street is boarded up, smashed up, abandoned, or on the verge of total collapse. What happened here? I understand that shops aren't always going to survive the current financial hardships of modern life, but why is the entire building being abandoned? This place is an absolute state. The only bit that was cared for was the World War I and World War II memorial, and directly opposite is a derelict church. Is this really what our ancestors were fighting for? It's hard to make jokes about Britain Ferry. I want someone to do something about this. All I feel like I can do is rant at the state of this place. It was horrible. I've seen lots of bad, and at this point it takes a fair bit to move me, so you know I'm not lying. It was worse than Rhymney, or at least on a par. You can pick up a house in Britain Ferry for $129,000. Massively overpriced, and the only thing that it has going for it is the road and rail links. Yeah, I forgot to mention there is actually a train station here. You'd barely know it though, and it's hidden under a bridge with no car park and it barely has a sign. Escape is always high on my agenda. It was really hard to locate a single green space here just to add to the horrible atmosphere. There's this huge knocked-down nursing home in the middle of one of the estates that I would turn into a nice park, but it's more than likely this will just sit like an infected scar-gathering gangrene for years to come. Whilst I feel some satisfaction in finally getting closure that a small town worse than Rhymney exists, it's still not good enough because this place isn't hidden up the ass crack of the valleys. It's not in an area renowned for struggle. The M4 literally passes straight through it, so this is not acceptable. But with a heavy heart, it's my duty to tell you that Britain Ferry is the biggest turd town in West Glamorgan, and I expect it's one of the worst places in Wales. So that's it, the 6 biggest turd towns. We've got some full logs coming your way, and another episode of Turdtown has already been recorded, so I'm looking forward to releasing that throughout October. Do you agree with our choices today? Did we leave anywhere out? If your favourite towns didn't feature, it may have already appeared in one of our previous videos on Wales, which I'll link at the end of this one. And don't forget to hit like, share, comment and subscribe to help Turdtowns thrive.